Welcome to the Siga Network podcast. I am your host, Hui-Chin Chen. Today, we sit down with Emery Regal, CEO and founder of Averill Wealth, a firm licensed in Singapore and registered with the SEC. Emery brings over 30 years of global experience and specializes in cross-border wealth management for clients with U.S. tax connections. In this episode, she reveals her path from Wall Street to building a fee-for-service firm in Asia, the unique challenges expats face in Singapore, and how her team simplifies complex financial lives. Tune in for a candid look at what it takes to thrive in one of the world's most dynamic financial hubs. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Anne-Marie Regal. Hi, Marie. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us, or me, Avrio, in the background. It's awesome. Thank you.
Emery and I have been in quite a bit of contact in the last 5 years since the start of the Siga Network. Talked about her firm has grown a lot in the last few years, but I always thought it would be fascinating to really go back to a little bit of a history of how the advisors being in this space for a while, how they got into cross-border advising, working with cross-border clients. So, Emery, tell us a little bit about what got you into this and, how has it been?
So, my husband and I moved to Singapore in 2007, what we thought was a traditional expat experience. 2 years, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to have a great life, see Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Indonesia. And then the financial crisis came in 2008, and my husband worked for a bank that bought a failing bank in the US. And when we looked at each other, we realized there would not be a job to go back to. So we decided to commit ourselves to Singapore, which meant what I was doing before was a docent. I was a docent at the National Museum of Singapore, guiding people through the history of Singapore. And I knew, being a woman of a certain age, I would not be able to go back to Wall Street and someone say, "What have you done for 10 years?" And I didn't think a docent was the right answer to get me back to Wall Street. So my skill set, private wealth management. I've been at Goldman Sachs in foreign exchange. I moved to what is now 1919 Investment Council, but its predecessors in private wealth management. And that was my skill set. Private wealth management, I had a CFP designation. And so I started knocking on doors in Singapore trying to find somebody to hire me. Private banks, absolutely, will hire you. What do you do? We sell products, sales, commission. You're going to be on the road all the time. You're going to build a book of business. And then when I go back to the US, my book of business stays with the private bank. That's not the world I'm from. And then eventually I found a little firm that's owned by an American and a Brit. They're still in business. I answered an ad to be a receptionist. I thought, why not? Sounds like the kind of firm that I could be in. I walked in the door and they're like, "You're clearly not a receptionist. And what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to do fee-based financial planning for Americans. I'm going to do the plan. I'm going to charge them a fee." And the American said, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. No one will pay fees. Everyone wants hidden commission, product sales." The Brit said, "Awesome. When do you want to start?" So I started. I got Money Guide Pro back then. Started charging people two, three, four, $5,000. And you're talking 2011 for a plan. I had no way to manage money, so everybody's self-directed at that point. Then I moved to another financial advisory firm that said, "We need you to get registered in the US." So I got registered with a small company in the US. So I was then able to continue the journey of financial planning and adding the wealth management. Eventually, it got to the point where people would say, "You're great. The name on the wall behind is not so great." because it is the offshore financial advisory world, which it's getting better, but it
Mm.
still has a reputation of selling products. So I decided I needed to start my own business. So we went to the Monetary Authority of Singapore and said, here we are, three CFP professionals. Uh, if we submit an application, would you deem it favorable? And they said, absolutely. Your fee based model is the future of Singapore. So we got our license in record time and we opened January 2nd, 2020. And 2 months later, the world shut down with COVID. So the irony of that time was, well, we had quite a few clients of our own, but Singapore went into hard lockdown. People were losing jobs. They didn't have wills. They didn't have life insurance. Their family members were dying. They couldn't get out of Singapore. Just so many issues were happening in the personal lives of people that we were able to build a business quite quickly at that time, being in the right space at the right time. It's funny, by the time Singapore opened, which was the end of 2022, I still hadn't met people. It wasn't until like 2023 when we would actually have in-person physical meetings with probably half of our clients. So fast forward, we're going on 6 years and the business keeps growing. We have more and more staff. We now have a office space problem. We have too many people for a couple small offices, and we're busy looking for new offices in Singapore. So, I mean, it's growing because we're just very different from what's in Singapore.
Yeah, I would be really interested to hear how the cross-border part come to it, right? Like, obviously, as American, originally being in Singapore, and you were saying, I want to work with American. Combining sort of Americans in Singapore, like knowing both was always part of what you want to provide, and how difficult was it to do both?
Well, as I said to my partner, Mike, you cannot be a cross border advisor until you file your own tax returns. Because if you don't understand a US tax return, you can't give advice. I never thought cross border.
Mm,
When I started this journey, I never thought, oh, awesome, it's cross border. I just thought I live in Singapore. My clients are like me. We have health insurance issues, we have life insurance issues. If you're a permanent resident, you have CPF. Can you optimize it? You know, how can you invest your money? Are you tax compliant? So I think in the cross border, you start with kind of this sounds great, and then it snowballs. Every
mm,
client comes in with a different journey. They come from a different place. They've
mhm.
been in maybe 2 or 3 countries. They end up in Singapore. They're not going back to the US. They're going forward to another country. So you're learning every single day. A day does not go by where I'm not learning something or I forget it, because I haven't touched that topic in the last 4 years. And then somebody comes in and I think, right, I have to research that again because I've forgotten about it. I think in the US, if you're an advisor, you live in a city and say you're in Palo Alto, most of your clients are tech. So they're going to be a bit formulaic and similar. No two people come into my life the same. So I didn't, we didn't, I guess you're cross border by nature of being here, but
Mm,
you expand your knowledge and what you do all the time. And your fear, of course, is always you're going to give the wrong information.
mm,
So you research again, you go out to your network, you double and triple check for,
mhm,
something that is a bit new or fresh to you.
mhm.
But I do think it's more interesting than maybe, well, it's all I know. So of course I find it more interesting.
No, I agree, having a similar experience. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm curious, starting from, working with clients that are like you and then realizing, well, they're actually going to be a snowball of all these things that I didn't know the answers to? Like, at what point did you realize that, okay, I need to get some kind of resources or information, or like how do you make that possible?
I think there's obviously through the SIGA network, through financial planning, the international, there is a small community of people who will actually help each other versus just hand them over to me. There's a lot of research. There's also, we work with centers of influence. So, a very good network of tax and estate professionals who I turn to. And that's not just US. I have an American moving to Australia. I have somebody in Australia who is familiar with working with Americans, but who is truly a Australian tax expert. And for structuring, because our firm, we can only work with accredited investors. So our clients tend to want to start businesses. So how do you start a business? You have maybe an operating company in Australia and you have the holdco in Singapore, and it's, majority owned by US, but maybe there's not a US. So a lot of our conversations must involve other people. I mean, we can't know it. I mean, there is a bit over time you're like, okay, I'm familiar with this, but you still can't make an assumption that the rules in Australia are still the same. And that's really where the danger is, that you assume your knowledge has not changed.
How do you, I guess, keep that relationship going? I find a lot of times that for a very particular case, you need this type of, even if it's the same country, like talking about someone going to Australia, one person you've worked with may have the favorable position or, have the knowledge for this particular case, but may not necessarily for another client in a kind of slightly different situation. How do you keep that broad network and continue to find the people that you can work with and the client likes to work with?
I think over time, you build a broad enough network. So you can reach out to somebody in Australia and say, I have a client who is in Melbourne and they want to do X. Who do you know in that area? Or can you refer somebody to me who's in Sydney for this client? And you're 100% right. There's personality fits. You don't want to engage in a relationship for your client with somebody who they don't connect with. So as you so I've been doing this since 2011 in Singapore, essentially Asia. So your network expands. And again, like we said, there's other advisors in the space. So if I go down and think, okay, I know these three people, but I don't think they're a good fit for my client, knowing their personality, I'll go out to my professional network and say, I have somebody who's like this, and this is the type of professional they need to work with. Because if there's a mismatch when you bring in a third party professional, it reflects very poorly on you.
Yeah,
And
so
this is a
having,
relationship industry, right? If you don't have the right relationships, how do you keep growing?
yeah, definitely. With the building a community is such an important thing. And sometimes it is a challenge, trying to grow a cross-border planning firm, like a practice, a firm, or even just your own knowledge, the community and the network of people that you have is so crucial. What other kind of challenges did you have to go, to overcome when you're trying to, work in a cross-border space, especially in the context of Singapore?
Well, I'll give you an example of a new client we have right now. We don't only work with US clients. Probably 98% of our new clients are referrals. So we have two Americans at one company who are very pleased, and they recommend the Dutch German couple. Totally out of our wheelhouse. But we don't want to say no because they need help. They can pay for our advice, so it's not a question. But they come in with documents in German and and different types of pensions and insurances. Of course, AI can help a lot now, which we didn't have years ago. I mean, Google Translate was like the great new tool for a while, and we can solve some of it. But then we go out to, say, a lawyer or an accountant somewhere else, then say, hey, you know, we'll clean it up, but like, what is this general policy or product? So that's how our cross border knowledge keeps growing.
Yeah, you have to have a certain level of curiosity to deal with the type of work you've never dealt with before.
Totally.
Yeah. And how do you decide? Do you ever turn away clients because they're too complex? Or how do you decide who
No.
you would work with?
So we have 4 CFP professionals, and we have a new person who started who is UK, who has the, like, highest qualifications in the UK, but he knows Brits, Aussies, Swedish. He knows kind of Northern Europe really well. So we try to have as much in-house knowledge as we can. I mean, if there's somebody who's massively complex, we would probably say, we're definitely not the right person for you. We're not the right company for people who don't believe in integrated planning and wealth management. You have to value the advice and the planning. Even though we have portfolio management, we have Michael Humphreys, CFA, Kaya, we're working towards GIPS verification to have institutional level portfolios. We like the personal relationship of the client. So I think people who just are more transactional or just are, what's my portfolio? Like every day, what's my portfolio is a very poor fit for our firm. I think, as a planner, we can't look at what happened in the market yesterday. We have to plan for whatever their goals are. So, goals based investing, essentially. And when a client buys into planning, they have a lot of internal peace and comfort that you are managing their wealth and their plan for whatever may come. I don't know about you, but a regular question we get is the market going to crash? Our answer is yes, the market will crash.
Hmm.
Do I know when? No. But have comfort that your kids' education, you have that money. Or, right now, I can tell you in this world, we have about 5 clients who are losing their jobs. Senior, close to 7-figure incomes. Now all of a sudden you're an expat. You can stay here depending on your past, but what are you going to do? They need to live off of that money. They still have existing liabilities, education, college, rent, mortgage, whatever. So they come to us the minute they know, and we change their plan, whatever it might be, and work with them to achieve that next step, which I'm not sure if you just manage somebody's money, that relationship would happen. They'd
Yeah,
call up screaming
definitely.
if they lost money, probably not telling you that they lost their job.
You talked a little bit about the challenges of building a cross-border firm and the knowledge base in serving the clients. What are some of the challenges of the cross-border clients that you work with and that you see? I'm sure a lot of them came from other advisors and they were not really serving them well because they have unique, needs. So, what are some of those things that you've seen, especially in the Singapore context, and how are you able to address them?
Singapore, unlike other jurisdictions, is considered a non starter for a lot of custodians. So, for a while, we were gathering clients who are, say, being kicked out of Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley because the advisor knows that the client lives here. And even though there's a US address, they're lying to their firm saying that the client lives in the US when they don't. I would say from that perspective, we do get an inflow from other advisors who are saying, just lie, just say you're in the US, don't worry. That's wrong. Actually, that's very wrong. You should never lie about where your client lives. So we have enough custodians who will work with our clients in Singapore and anywhere. The other area where we pick up clients is quite simply the time change is too difficult. So an advisor in the US is like, oh, it's just too hard to figure out the time change. And I mean, I know you understand fully you're on client calls first thing in the morning, late at night. You don't even think about the time change. But advisors in the US are kind of it's 9 to 5, 9 to 6, maybe, where for us, it's so client centric that we're here for our clients. Weekends, panic, something happened. Yeah, I'll help you on a weekend. I don't think most advisors are going to be there for their clients on a weekend.
Another major thing I think we've talked about before is Singapore for expats is never a permanent location. And tell us a little bit more about like the
Right,
planning complexity that comes with that.
right. So in Singapore, you have citizens, you have permanent residents, but that PR is not permanent, where maybe in Hong Kong it's really permanent. Here you have a re-entry permit that's renewed every 5 years. And ultimately, it's based upon how much tax are you paying or how much are you putting in your central provident fund, which is the sovereign, essentially becomes part of the sovereign wealth funds that they'll invest. So at some point when you're no longer working, whether you own a place or not, Singapore has the right to say to you, we're not renewing your reentry permit, which means if you own, great, but how can you renew your health insurance? You can't renew your phone contract or your utilities because you don't have a legal right to live here. And I will say Singapore has no illegal immigration. Maybe one person manages to swim in a year, maybe, and gets caught, but it's not a country where you can't end up here and get a phone and you can't rent here and you can't have a bank account. There's nothing you can do unless you have the right to live and work here. So the conversations I have with my clients as we age, there's a few things. One, your health insurance costs are going to go sky high. It, I make sure my clients are Medicare eligible. You've retired, do some self-employment work, get your 40 credits, you're Medicare eligible, so you always have that option. I talk to them about what's your plan B or what's your plan C. If you can't stay here, where are you going to go? Because the reality is, if you don't have your PR, as an American, you can stay here for 90 days, but you have to leave and come back. So you have to go up to Johor or go to Batam or go somewhere and get your passport restamped. That doesn't work if you're elderly and can't travel, you're in the hospital. So our planning is always around where are your kids? Where are your grandkids? Where can you set up a new life before you're too old to find your new community? Sounds great to move when you're 60. It's not so easy when you're 80 and you are no longer a welcome person in Singapore. It's hard to start your life. It's harder to move everything. So a lot of our conversations surround, can you stay here? And if you're married to a Singaporean, you have a better chance of your PR getting renewed, but is still not, or the reentry permit, it's still not guaranteed. So we'll say, do you want to go to Malaysia? Do you want to go to Thailand? If you want to stay in the region, those two have different visa programs. Thailand's got a pretty useful 10-year visa now. Malaysia keeps upping, you need X amount in the bank and you need X amount of secure income versus just income generated from your investments. So you might need an annuity to show you have secure income for their thresholds. But it is not home. And that's what you have to understand unless you give up your US passport. And we do have people who do that. Quite a few clients, US, non US. Brits give up their passports. I mean, that's a whole nother situation, but a Singapore passport is one of the top passports in the world, but you can't apply for it when you're too old. They don't want you at that point.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you made a good point about needing a plan B and a plan C and
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
and wanting to work with clients in the cross you mentioned something about you never come out to say, "Hey, I want to do cross-border planning." It's just you're working with people with cross the
Yeah.
need to have that plan A and plan C
Yeah.
outside, that
Yeah.
their resident country where they were from, they need to go to a third country, and that leads
Yeah.
us to this, multi-country cross-border planning,
It
problem.
is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
But you'll have like an American whose wife is Japanese, whose daughter is born in Singapore, and who marries an Indian, right? So all of a sudden, we have all of these different passports and options in the family. And you're like, well, do you want to go to Japan? Maybe not. Maybe that's less friendly
Mhm,
from an estate planning.
mhm,
Do you want to go to the
mhm,
US where your daughter is right now, but you don't know how to drive anymore or you've lost your license? You haven't kept your
mhm.
US license current.
Seconds,
So when
yeah,
you're
mhm.
70, it's not so easy to get your US license renewed. Do you want to go to New York? Probably not. Too expensive.
So you've been doing this since, I guess from Singapore since 2011. So
Yes.
it's a pretty long period of time. What has changed from, when you first started doing it? How has, if any cross-border planning was done
Yeah.
before, how has it changed? How has client changed, clients' needs and what
Yeah.
clients look like?
Well, from that original comment, people won't pay for a plan. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. To the other financial advisory firm where I had no shortage of Brits telling me I had the dumbest business model around because they sold all of those investment link insurance products, right? Where they took 200, like I have a client who in the Middle East bought one of those products. The commission was by the time I had to convince them to surrender it, I mean, because that's the balance, right? Do they keep it where the costs in the policy are 4% and it's not open architecture, so everything inside's a PFIC? Or do we just say, bite the bullet and get rid of it? Those, I would say there were two problems with it. One, they were products that started in the UK and they weren't meant for, say, Americans. Then the regulators allowed those products, but now the regulators have really pulled back. And if you even do try to sell them, you can't get paid in 18 months like one of the old policies. You would find that advisors would sell them as an 18-month policy because they got paid in 18 months.
Mhm,
That's changed. So less product. I also remember the day that Bank of Singapore ran a full page ad in the Straits Time saying they're going to all new fee model. They're going to start charging a percentage of assets under management,
hmm,
which we kind of laugh because that's been the fee model for so long in the US. So you do find that a lot of clients are paying fees. We still have not gotten rid of the bank model where you're paying 1% fees, but there's always a spread on trading. There's let me sell you, or you really need whole life, but I'm going to lend you the money so they have a loan on the back of that or margin. We still have clients coming in where they have a $2 million portfolio, of which they have 800,000 in leverage. And that margin, which is costing them 6 point something percent, has been invested in fixed income that's generating 3 or 4. So we still have that, but I think it's less. We are finding Singapore huge robos. There's some amazing robos that have come along that, in my view, is probably for the type of client who doesn't need advice, they're a much better option than going to a private bank. They're cleaner. Uh, most of them trade in USD. They trade the US markets, ETFs. Everything's priced in Sing dollars, but they look for the most efficient market. Some of them use the dimensional funds, which are all hedged to Sing. But that's been a huge game changer because now it's not me who's saying fiduciary, flat fee, assets based if you don't want advice, to now we have, I, in Roboland, they're less expensive. They're more than the US, but they're still less expensive than private banks. The financial planning there seems to be more people, like even the robos say, we have a financial planning team now, if you want. Okay, it's Singapore. Singaporeans, pure Singaporeans with no external cross border connections are easy. But even Fisher Investments has opened up here. And if you look on LinkedIn, they have download your guide to retirement. And it's a 30-page guide, and it's just meant for Singaporeans. And it has all of the formulas and calculations. And it shows that they're trying to educate people to stop using banks. Ella, one of my employees today, said she was looking for jobs, and one of the banks that she went to said, "We will hire you 6 months. We won't pay you any salary. You'll stand at the front and we'll see how well you can sell products." So it's still here, but I think it's getting better. And from a financial planning perspective, more and more people do value financial planning. It's just depending, as you know, depending upon your nationality, planning for some nationalities are much easier than others.
So the clients, do you find that clients now are coming and say, "Hey, we want some kind of cross-border planning?" Do they even know the term, or they just know, "Hey, it sounds like you know more than just Singapore. It sounds like you know Singapore and US." Or how do people who clearly has needs more than one country, how do they find you?
Well, referral, like I said, about
Mm,
98% referral.
mhm.
We're in the community. We're part of American Chamber of Commerce. We're part of British Chamber of Commerce. We go up to Singapore American School where my daughter graduated, and we actually do the fairs and the welcome back to school. And we are a major partner with the American Association of Singapore. So we're out in the community. We go to other people's events, we meet, we greet, we network. And it doesn't mean when you go out that night, you're going to find your next client. It means that you have met somebody who puts you in the back of your mind, especially as unique as we are. And then one day out of the clear blue, you'll get a call or WhatsApp that says, "Hi, your name was given to me by so and so," or your name came up on we're on some of the college WhatsApp chats. So if somebody graduated from a certain college, like I'm on the UNC WhatsApp chat. I mean, I'm a parent, but there's always different things. So we get a lot of referrals in from that way. We get referrals in from corporations who, when they bring them over and say, "Hey, maybe you want to talk to these people," especially for tax strategies surrounding RSUs and options, because Singapore taxes when you leave. So if you're allowed to keep your RSUs, they're deemed vested the day you leave the company. So you have to do full tax clearance. And a lot of people have no idea that they're going to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax on all of those RSUs. So accountants, same thing. When they meet somebody who has a lot of RSUs, they'll say, "You might want to talk to, Anne-Marie and her team so you understand what could happen along the way." That person might not become our client, but we gave them the correct advice. We're fiduciaries, and they're quite happy just being able to talk to like-minded. We've helped them solve a problem.
Yeah. helping clients solve problems seems to be the
Mhm.
the main
Yeah.
reason. I guess the main reason why they were looking for you in the first place is a problem to be solved. So, looking forward, are you seeing a change in what cross-border clients, or just call them cross-border clients, or clients with cross-border lives? Do you see how their needs may be changing? Like looking forward to, how I guess all the how the world has changed, in the last few years. Have you been seeing things that you haven't seen in the past or haven't seen as much in the past?
I think it comes in waves. So last year was my year of escheated assets, and we talked to clients about interacting with their bank accounts, with their investment accounts. Don't because everything is tracked. Everything is technological. If you don't log in, a lot of people move. They don't change their address. They assume that whatever, there's no paper statements, it doesn't make a difference. So it will come in waves of shaded assets. And then sadly enough, I'll get a wave of somebody having lost a family member or losing a family member. Not sure what 2026 will bring. This year has been turbulent in the fact that people want to bring their assets to Singapore, US residents. So if you can solve the one US resident who wants Singapore custody, you have a lineup of other people. Optionality with passports has been big. We've done a lot of work with Henley and Partner with our clients this year. The visa programs evolve. One day they're open, one day they're not. We'll put somebody in application in, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, wait, they're meeting, they might be changing the rules. Global currency portfolios have been big this year. I've always been of the mindset that invest in what's going to be your use currency. If you need dollars, you need Aussie dollars, you need Sing dollars, you need euro. You still have to invest in the US because that's your base currency, but you should invest in your use currency. Well, now people are saying, I want all currencies. I want, I don't want to be in only USD anymore. So I would say this is a year where our global multi-currency portfolios have skyrocketed. But like I said, I don't know what 2026 will bring. I mean, is it the hood bill goes through and we no longer have global taxation? And actually I look at that and think, it's great, but it's bad because that means you can walk into banks and those people are going to be like, here's your PFIC, here's your PFIC. And I mean, it's not a PFIC anymore, but a lot of them aren't great investments. I don't know if that's what you see or you think.
Yes, I think a lot of what you said, like the global currency and um, one thing I found interesting is a lot of at least in 2025, seems like a lot of what happened in the world seems to point to kind of global protection, like individual countries protecting their
Right.
own interest. However, that leads to people want to have more global footprint,
Yeah.
because they want to
Yep.
be, restricted in one country. And I find that a very fascinating, contradiction of what the government's doing and what the people are doing.
Yeah. I mean, my view is politics and religion don't belong in financial planning. Our job is to help people achieve their goals and their lifestyle and protect the vision that they have for their family. Um, but it is, of course, reactionary to what is happening on a political level. Uh, we just ran an event last night, and Michael Humphreys, our head of investments, got up with all of these statistics, kind of worked his way around the world. And some of it was a bit sad, what's happening in the world in general, but some of it still shows the strength of, the US. It is still the number outside of the UAE. It is still a top destination for people who want to go into the US. So I will say when you travel around emerging Asia, people will always used to come up, our family would travel around. People come up and say, Are you American? You're so lucky to be American. If I could move, I would. Is it true if you work hard, you can become rich? That is true in America. Absolutely true. In some countries in Asia, it doesn't make a difference how hard you work. The system will not let you become rich, and rich is different for everyone. So, we our job is really just to be here, talk to them, sometimes talk them off the cliff, the sky's falling.
Mhm,
If the sky really does fall, let's not worry about your portfolio. Doesn't make a
mhm,
difference at that point.
mhm,
But it's really just to help them be practical and achieve what they're looking to achieve.
mm, mhm,
And because next year the politics can change. It could revert. Maybe something happens in Europe and nobody wants Europe anymore.
mhm. Yeah.
Singapore, New Zealand, Australia
Mhm,
are not super friendly for immigration,
mhm.
nor, it's there's limitations. There's only so many places you can go in the world. So sometimes you have to make do with what you have and just kind of tune out the noise.
I think I want to pivot to a question. So far, this conversation, I hear a lot of how it's just basically how your personal philosophy of, how you approach client relationship and how you approach planning is a very important thing. I think there was this discussion of like whether cross-border planning is really fundamentally different from financial planning. How do you think about that from a technical standpoint and also just from a fundamental standpoint?
Everything is different about cross border planning from what people need for emergency funds to what they need for healthcare, insurances, how their portfolios are positioned, their estate plan. We often say what worked in the US doesn't travel with you, or probably won't travel with you. So the technical is here's your tax return, here's maybe your portfolio. But the specialization comes from where have you been? What have you gathered in Germany, for example, that you brought with you to Singapore and that you'll take with you to Australia as a US taxpayer? So that is something that even if you're a cross-border planner sitting in the US, you can't relate to because you're not here living their life. You don't know what it's like on the ground day to day, what the schools are like. You don't understand their employee benefits. You come from a US company, for example, in the US where you have your menu and you can choose. Here, don't have to companies don't have to give health insurance, and when they do, maybe it's only 80 or 100,000 sing. So that's where that cross-border expertise comes in because, then you have to say, okay, you're telling them what they have. You're telling them, unfortunately, they have to buy their own insurance policy. And then you say, where are you going? Are you planning to stay in Asia? Because you might need this policy. Because as you age, you're probably going to have health issues, and we can't insure you with local insurance providers if you have any pre-existing. We could out of the US, but you might pay for, like, say, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Their expat is Geo Blue.
True.
So we've covered people with juvenile diabetes for 6 years. So that's impactful in somebody's financial plan. I would like somebody sitting in the US to understand that. They don't. That's your cross border expertise and what you bring to clients every day. Somebody today, tax issue, not tax compliant, but US CPA died. And said US CPA died, who actually hadn't been filing tax returns for 2 or 3 years, but she didn't know because she'd been giving that person. She'd been signing documents and everything. So now we have this whole tax nightmare, and we're pulling IRS transcripts and we're logging in. And what also people don't realize in cross border, it's almost impossible to get ID me to work or log me in. In Singapore, there's a drop down that you can use an international number. You can type in Singapore and it doesn't work. No one sitting in the US would know that that's an issue. So these are those little things that come up every day with people. And then it's okay, back pattern. Are you streamlined? Are you 3 years? Are you 5 years? Was it willful? Wasn't it? You know,
Mhm.
that,
Mm.
so that's an example. It's also the fact pattern if somebody's child is really a US citizen. How long, where were you born? How long did you live in the US up until whatever age? Because you'll find here, I think here what we get is we didn't get them a US passport, so they're not US. Hmm, sure.
Yeah.
Of course they're US. Their mother's American, right? I don't know how many people in the US would be familiar with things like that. It's pretty, I think that's where we add so much value as planners. And, as you do it for 14 years, there is no way to learn cross-border planning. There's no course. I mean, there's somebody who teaches it. You you can't teach when everybody comes in and is different. There's no course you can take that says, here's how to be a cross-border planner. You have to live cross-border. All of us live the life of our clients so we can 100% relate to their life. And that's, I think, why we're successful because we know their life. We know what they go
Mhm.
through on a daily basis.
Yeah, and to go one step further from there, given everything that you've accumulated throughout these years and the experience and, working with clients, what are you seeing are some of the things that are still challenging? If we let's say we are a community of cross-border planners. We all
Yeah.
work with clients in some way. We learn from each other, but there are still things that are very challenging and we're not doing. We wish we could do better. What are some of those things that, you know, us as a community can do better in terms of serving cross-border clients?
I I think you've heard me say this. You really do need to partner with other people, with other advisors. In a perfect world, I would like to have an office in Australia, Singapore, maybe Hong Kong, somewhere in Europe, UK, US. Perfect world. To me, that would be, you have your work CFPs, you have a focus on planning, you have a tax specialization, and your clients can move seamlessly within the same company with even to some extent with the same advisor because you have advisors on the ground. That to me would be the correct way to do cross border financial planning. And I would love to see a place where that could happen versus just handing off to XYZ company in another country. Again, it's relationships. So I like my client. They'd moved to the UK. Maybe I shouldn't really be working with them because I'm not licensed in the UK. And I see all the time in our cross border chats where people are experts in the US or their clients moving to the UK and they want to retain their client. And I'm like, it's not really the right thing to do. The right thing is to always partner with somebody on the ground, figure out a revenue share. You're helping the client, you're a fiduciary. I mean, we have the perfect example now where a couple in the US has an advisor in the US who's in our community. They moved here. He gave up his green card. She is a US citizen. We manage his money here. We work with the advisor for her money there. We do the cross border planning for tax because she's sitting here. And then we go and tell the advisor in the US, do this kind of Roth conversion. We're not staking a client We can work collaboratively. It's not their client, it's not our client, it's our client. And ultimately, that is how we should work versus, being like, I don't want to lose a client. Nobody really wants to lose, but in cross border, you can't know everything.
You said it perfectly. We can't know everything, and that's how I feel every day. And
Yeah.
and one thing though I also get from clients is some clients will push back and saying there are too many people I have to work with, because their life is
No.
spanning, countries or,
Yeah. Yeah.
different specialties. So how do you address, clients, I wouldn't say complain, but, sentiment in that situation?
So we get letters of authority
Mhm.
signed by the client. So I affectionately say this allows us to talk about you behind your back. It essentially allows us to share
Mhm.
information. So we get the work done and then go to the client as a team. We're not bringing the client in for should we, shouldn't we? What do you think? Because it's those kind of emails that fill up a client's inbox and it's not adding any value. My clients want to say, or they say to me, I want my life simplified. Do as much as you can and tell me what to do. So as long as we, work with the attorney and the accountant and the other advisor and the insurance, it's all in the background. For example, today a client of mine, his invoice is overdue and he wants another portfolio review. He just had one in May. So it's not even that long. So my business manager sent him an invoice and he said, oh, we're having our review in December, so I'll pay it then. And I went back and I said, we don't work this way. This year we've done this for your parents, this for your girlfriend, this for your brother, right? This for you. We got your estate plan and he managed his own money. So it's just a pure fee. We are audited, regulated, we're professional. You either pay our fee or we can't work with you. But I think a lot of clients, they forget how much we do for them on a day-to-day basis. That doesn't mean we've emailed. You have the cost of running a business, you have your staff, you have technology, software, insurance, regulatory. All of that happens and the knowledge, you know, okay, you're moving to Italy in some small little town, and I've got to figure out what your documents mean, and that's going to take me a few hours. But I know what to look for in those documents, for example. That takes time. That's where our expertise is. And there's so much that goes on in the background for our clients. So when we sit down with them and we have the agenda, how much work have you done to even get to that agenda? You've gone through all their notes, you've gone through all their plans, you've gone through their portfolio, you've gotten their updated RSUs and anything different that you don't have. You've had them update their logins to freshen everything up. By the time you get to the agenda, you've put a few hours in preparing for that meeting. Then you have the meeting and then you walk away with a long to-do list. It's never, that was a great meeting. I'll see you later. So I think that's when it comes to, working with many different people. When I get to that agenda, I've covered the insurance person. I've covered tax. We're very clear with where that client is in their tax return. Did they have an estate change? Is there anything? So you kind of go down the planning topics. What are their goals? What needs to be done to their portfolio now for those goals? And are those goals still valid? That all happens in the background.
Yeah,
So,
I
I mean, the
think
client came back and apologized, it was like, I got it. But I was just like, come on. Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's great today you gave us a lot of kind of behind the scenes of, how you actually work with clients. That, some of it might be very similar to just how any advisor with clients, but in a cross-border context, it is, like the things that we're focusing on is a little bit
Yeah.
different. We're focusing on network, the community, like making clients' life simple by doing
Yeah.
all of those coordination in the background. So to wrap up, I kind of want to just ask one question. I think I don't know if you get a lot of inquiries from people who are trying to get into cross-border planning, but I get this question a lot, how, like, if it's for people who are new to this and they're interested in getting into working in cross-border context, like, what are some of the things or maybe one thing they should start with?
Tax returns, understanding whether it's foreign earned income exclusion, a foreign tax credit, the housing. I think tax returns are probably the most important basis. You cannot give good advice surrounding how to manage portfolios or anything unless you know a tax return. Because are those capital gains taxed here or there? Italy, for example. You live in Italy, you can only offset gains and losses per security. You can't cross populate. So you have to understand tax deeply. My view, and when we talk to people who want to get into it, I'll say it's 3 years. You have to learn the Avrio way and how we work and our software and how it all interacts. Then you have to understand planning. So we run even in-house I have a very young team. I have 2 in their 20s, I have 3 in their 30s, I have 3 in their 40s, and then much older. So we run training in-house. We get the financial plan up, and we're a mock client, and we let everybody pretend, that they're the advisor. So there's a lot of training just for the simple, how do you go through the financial plan? How do you set goals? We had a media group come in. He's been on CNBC and everything. And we actually did training with my team of how to meet and greet, how to look somebody in the eye, how to answer a question, what's your elevator pitch, how to dress. In Singapore's hot. So you can't really expect somebody to come in a suit. But there is a professional way of dressing when you're meeting with clients. So we spent 4 hours of training, put everyone on a video to improve their just skill set. So it's not just the knowledge, it is also in Singapore, where it's one big family office and private bank. How do you act amongst your peers? And how do you interact with clients and prospects? And what sets our company apart? So those are all part things that anyone who's getting into cross-border has to understand. It's not just, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be a cross-border planner. It's how do you interact in your community and learn those skills at the same time. So I think I've determined it's about a 3-year journey,
And do
at
they
least in
need to be
Singapore.
and they need to be in Singapore?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, Singapore's unique in the employment pass issue. I mean, we were talking to somebody in Washington actually about learning cross border. He wanted to move here. His wife was Vietnamese, but I think people have to understand that Singapore, your employment pass is based upon your age and your education and how many dependents you're going to bring in. So younger, we can pay you less, but the minute you get somebody in their 40s, you're at 20,000 Sing a month. So you can't start cross border here. You have to start somewhere else. So, we've had different talks over the years. Just the cost of a jurisdiction like this makes it prohibitive, which is why I've kind of gone the other way. And I take young, hungry kids who, they have the social skills. And in 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to be late 20s. Singapore is young. We have no shortage of 29-year-olds who started their own company and they're looking at big exits. People come from the US to Asia. The tech companies bring them over young. We kind of have a match of the age, but they'll sit and do the work and they'll learn the basics. But every day we do training, we teach. We don't run silos in our firm. So we swap in and out. Ethan will join one day, Ella will join another day, Dan will join another day, David will join another day, Michael will join another day. So we actively cross train. Our clients know more than one CFP professional, and they know more than one other team member. And that is super important for cross border as well, because if I die, who has the knowledge? So from a business standpoint, that's also important. You can't, on top of it, you can't know everything. So we come in, I'll say, Ella, would you look this up? So and so, would you look that up? And then we sit down and we talk about what information they found. Is it right? Isn't it right? So not only are you learning when you run a company, you're training and you're educating your staff and clients. We just had somebody who sold his business. We've been doing a plan for him. And now he, super smart, MIT, many tens of millions came in from selling his company. So he said, what would you do for it? Okay, we're going to start here. But he said, look, I know my world. I don't know your world. So we're educating our clients as well. This is an ETF. This is what that means. Here's a muni bond. This is what that means. Our wealthy clients, we bring the kids in. How are you going to be a steward of wealth for the next generation? So cross-border, you are also teaching these kids what it means to be a cross-border kid, that they have to file their tax returns, that they're going to inherit money from their US or non-US parent. And they're cross-border, they're third culture. So I think it's just one constant education. All day I sit down in my office and it's Emery, 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 Emery all day. I once said to my husband, I'm like, I can't, if I hear my name one more time, I'm going to kill myself because Emery has work to do. But on the flip side, it's great because they want to learn and they have questions. If you don't have questions as a cross-border advisor, you are not learning or growing, and you can't serve your clients.
I think that's a perfect end to our discussion
Yeah.
today. Cross-border work as constant learning, and I think you've made Ariel sounds like an extremely attractive place to work for people, young people who want to get into cross-border planning and willing to
Yeah.
be in Singapore. And I
Yeah.
hope you have a lot of qualified people contacting you when you have those positions open. And
Yeah.
well,
Well, I mean,
thank
I've
you.
gone out to you. I'm like looking for an advisor in the US with a book who wants to move here, but that seems to be hard. I've gotten people in the US who want to move here, but they don't have a book. But we
Yeah,
are open always to, I think, I mean, if you love cross border, you love sharing that knowledge.
yeah, definitely. And well, thank you so much being on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Siga Network podcast. This show is produced by Jeffrey Benalisha. You can find more episodes on thesiganetwork.com/podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Until next time.